Okay, good morning, class. So, for today's lesson, we're gonna talk about the guidelines on the selection of teaching strategies. So, here, we're going to define first the teaching and learning strategies. Teaching strategies, these are the techniques and methods that a teacher applies to support learning or to support student learning. So here, a teacher selects the teaching strategy, the most suited most suited to the current level of knowledge of the students, which means that you have to, of course, think what is the capacity of your learners in order for you to apply the best teaching method. So the concept being studied also is an integral aspect and the stage in the learning journey of the students. While also, on the other side, the learning strategy, it is a learner's way to organize and use a specific range of skills to learn. In the learning strategy, the students will have the skills to learn curriculum content, or complete other tasks more efficiently and effectively in a classroom setting as well as in non-academic settings. So class, always remember that an effective teacher applies the most innovative and creative teaching methods to teach academic concepts and meet the individual needs of students. However, the demands of the ever-expanding curricular means that educators often stick to their favored teaching methodology. But we all have our preferred teaching methodology, but it is important, of course, to explore evidence-informed pedagogical ideas that have the potential to expand our reliability in the classroom. And that is the reason why we need to discuss the guidelines or principles on the selection of teaching strategies. Now, let's have the first principle. In the first principle, you have to think that learning is an active process. In that instances, we have to actively engage the learners in learning activities if we want them to learn what we intend to teach. What does it mean? It means that we have to give our students opportunities to participate in, of course, classroom activities. We have to guide the learners by giving them a varied activities, of course, like hands-on, minds-on learning, for them to engage in the learning process. Also, researchers found out that the most effective approaches resulting 75% rates in learning by doing, such as through the inquiry method, 90% in learning by teaching others, that is according to Danielson 2002. Now, the best quote that serves as an apt summary of the principles is the quote, "What I hear, I forgot. What I see, I remember. What I do, I understand." So we must always remember this when we want to be a teacher. Here in the second principle, you also need to consider that the more sense that are involved in learning, the more and the better the learning. So in this principle, it highlights the use of combined 3 or more senses is considered to be the most effective. Thus, the term is called the multisensory aids, which means that what is seen and heard are learned more than what are just seen or just heard. As what you can see on the screen, the graph below shows the contribution of the five senses to learning. So you can see there's the sight with 75%, hearing 13%, touch 6%, together with the smell and taste with 3%. That is according to the contribution of the senses to learning. So this implies the use of a teaching methodology that makes use of more visual aids than mere audio aids. So a combination of audio and visual aids, thus the term A to V aid, which means audio visual. So learning that considers to be more effective in strategy in learning. Now, the third principle states that a non-threatening atmosphere enhances learning. So, as a teacher, you must think the physical environment that your student will feel comfortable so that they will be willing to engage in your class. Because a non-threatening and conducive classroom atmosphere is not only a function of the physical condition of the classroom, but more a function of the psychological climate that prevails in the classroom. So the physical classroom conditions, this includes the proper lighting, ventilation, order, tidiness, and painting of the room. And it is also important to consider the psychological climate as an offshoot of your personality as a teacher. Our rapport between us and our students, the relationship between and among us teachers and among to our students. So the psychological climate will be more potent in its influence on teaching and learning than the physical climate. So for you soon to be teachers, if we really care for that learning of our pupils or their students, we cannot ignore the creation of a psychological atmosphere that is supportive of learning. Now, how to contribute to the creation of a positive classroom atmosphere. So the first step is to cultivate a culture of respect in our schools. To respect is to give every learner, every teacher, every colleague the benefit of the doubt. To respect a student or a colleague means to be convinced of his or her basic goodness, and therefore, you have to trust him or her. To respect is to believe in every person's worth and in every person's capacity. We must also learn to believe in your students' capacity, because when we believe in our students' capacity, our students will most likely succeed, and when they succeed, they learn that they are capable of success and are willing in turn to take on additional challenges. In short, success breeds success. And of course, it is very satisfying for you as a teacher. Also, making your students feel they belong to a community of learners with shared goal or purpose, because class, when we make our students or pupils feel they belong to a community of learners with a shared goal or purpose, they will also feel that there's such a place for everyone to reach his or her potential, where we make them feel at ease and at home. And we must also encourage more collaboration and cooperation with less competition among our students. In this context, a competitive classroom spirit is certainly damaging in our attempt to produce a favorable classroom atmosphere. While competition, when used judiciously, may motivate students, it is believed to bring more harm than bring good effect. So for greater learning, we should encourage more collaboration and cooperation, and of course, less competition. If ever there will be competition, it is our students competing against themselves to be better. Also, another way by which we can establish a healthy class atmosphere for learning is to give allowance for mistakes. According to what Pine and Horn 1994 state that the learning process requires the challenge of new and different experiences. So the trying of the unknown grid, therefore, necessarily must involve the making of mistakes. That in order for people to learn, so they need the opportunity to explore new situations and ideas without being penalized or punished for the mistakes that are integral to the activity of learning with the students. Here in the fourth principle, it highlights that emotion has the power to increase retention and learning. To add an emotional touch to learning is an essential aspect because we tend to remember and learn more those that strike our hearts. In fact, the more emotionally involved our students become in our lesson, the greater the impact. So the more intense the arousal, the stronger the imprint. So providing emotional dimension in the classroom is far more effective. In that instance, let us not feel afraid to bring in emotion into our classrooms. Let us add an emotional touch to learning. Without the emotional dimension, our subject matter will remain cold and lifeless. Wolf states that our own experience validates that we remember for a longer time events that elicit emotion in us. That is according to Wolf 2001. His pedagogical advice is for us to recognize the power of emotion, to increase retention, and plan instruction accordingly. Now, in the fifth principle, it states that learning is meaningful when it is connected to students' everyday life. So, abstract concepts are made understandable when we give sufficient examples relating to the students' experiences, wherein the meaningfulness and relevance of what we teach is considerably reduced by our practice of teaching simply for testing. We teach today, ask them to copy and memorize what we taught them. Also, in the following day, we test them on how much they have retained from what we taught yesterday. In that case, students will be able to relate it to their daily experiences. Or also, our manner of teaching can be simply improved by integrating the answering pedagogy. So they see meaning in what they learn when we, teachers, show the connectedness of our lessons to their everyday concern, to their daily life. This principle highlights that good teaching goes beyond recall of information, wherein our teaching should reach the levels of application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation to hone our students' thinking skills, or this is what we call the Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives. Good thinking concerns itself with higher order thinking skills to develop creative and critical thinking of the students. Most teachings are confined to the recall of information and comprehension. Now, the seventh principle states that an integrated teaching approach is far more effective than teaching isolated bits of information. According to Corpus and Salandanan 2003, they claim that an instructional approach is integrated when it considers the multiple intelligences and varied learning styles of students. So, there are as many learning styles as there are pupils or students in our classrooms. So, to impose our learning style may jeopardize learning. So, prescribing our own learning style as though it is the best style of learning is presumptuous. So, we were made to think then that human intelligence comprised only of linguistic and mathematical or logical intelligences. But with Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences theory, we are introduced to 7 more intelligences, namely the spatial, musical, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalist, and the existentialist intelligence. For effective teaching, it is imperative on our part to possess a repertoire of teaching and testing strategies, and also techniques to reach a full range of students with, of course, varied learning styles and multiple intelligences. Here is an integrated approach incorporates successful research-based and brain-based instructional strategies. So the following are some research findings cited by Patricia Wolf in her book Brain Matters: Translating Research into Action, 2001. Some research findings about the brain by Wolf, 2001. First, without rehearsal or constant attention, information remains in working memory for only about 15 to 20 seconds. So this implies the need for memory aids. Next is learning is a process of building neural networks. So this network is formed through concrete experience, representational or symbolic learning, and abstract learning. So the three levels of learning are concrete, symbolic, and the abstract learning. So this finding implies that teaching strategies that make the students experience the concrete, this is through field trips or use of realias or real things, or through the actual experience in solving authentic problems in the community, are also effective. From the concrete level of learning, we go higher to the symbolic and to the abstract levels. So if we at once begin with the symbolic or abstract, we face the risk of disappointment and failure. So because our brains have difficulty comprehending very large numbers, because we have nothing in our experience to hook them to. So as mentioned in the preceding paragraph, it is always best to engage our students in the learning experience. Next is the eyes contain nearly 70% of the body's sensory receptors and send millions of signals every second along the optic nerves to the visual processing of the brain. Now, the capacity of the long-term memory for pictures seems almost unlimited. So several studies show how well the mind processes and remembers visual information. For example, the expressions, "I never forget a face," "I see what you mean," "I can't picture but I can't recall the name," can attest to this finding. So there is little doubt that when information is embedded in music or rhyme, its recall is easier than when it is in prose. For instance, if you are asked to write the pambansang awit, of course, you have to sing the song in order to remember the lyrics. Now, for the brain-based strategies, this includes involving students in real life or authentic problem solving, using projects, simulations, and role plays, classroom strategies, songs, jingles, and raps, mnemonic strategies. You could also use writing strategies, active review, hands-on activities. So these are some effective strategies you can use in an integrated approach. So for an integrated approach is also an interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. For example, if you teach science, you interrelate and connect the topic like care for the environment with the kinds of pollution and global climatic changes. So this can be considered as interdisciplinary. But if your content in science is used to teach grammar and values, so this is called multidisciplinary. Also, an instructional approach is or can be integrated when it includes the acquisition of knowledge, skills, and as well as values. And now we are down to the last principle, which states that there is no such thing as best teaching method. The best method is the one that works, the one that yields results. So there are factors to consider in the choice of a teaching method. So these factors are the instructional objective, the nature of the subject matter, the learners, the teacher, and of course, the school policies. So to discuss the instructional objectives, it is essential that when our lesson is focused on the mastery of a skill like writing a paragraph, we will need a strategy different from that which we employ when we intend to teach an appreciation lesson. Also, the nature of the subject matter. So when subject matter is quite difficult, it is necessary that we employ the deductive method, right? So of course, you must start from general to specific ideas, because we might end up more inefficient and ineffective when we proceed inductively. Now, for the learner's level of readiness is a factor that we cannot ignore. So that's why educators talk about assessing the entry knowledge and skills of our pupils or students to determine their level of readiness. So this is exactly what we do when we give a placement test at the beginning of our lesson to find out how we can group our learners or our students according to entry knowledge and skills. So we group ultimately for purposes of course, differentiated instruction, or in the light of Gardner's multiple intelligences theory. It is a strategy for the kinesthetically intelligent may not necessarily fit that of the linguistically intelligent, nor the logically intelligent, or maybe the spatially intelligent students. So moreover, the teacher is another factor also to look into the choice of strategy. So beginning teachers do not feel very confident in the use of the inductive method or the specific to general method. So even if it generates more active participation on the part of the learners, if we feel we are still groping for our subject matter and uncertain in its effective implementation, then it is wiser on our part not just to employ it. And now for the last but not the least, the school policies. So for us, how do school policies come in the choice of a method? So educational field, for example, educational field trips are hands-on strategy proven for its effectiveness for all the years. But if school policy does not allow it for one reason or another, then let us not insist on its use for our learning strategy. Okay, class, that's the end of our discussion for today. I hope you learned something about the topic that we have discussed. So, before I will end, I just want to leave this quote by Scott Hayden that states that teachers have three loves: the love of learning, the love of learners, and the love of bringing the first two loves together. So again, thank you class for listening. If you want to learn more about this topic, you may visit these following references. So goodbye everyone and God bless.